the Friday Cocktail, presented by Anna Glowinski.
Now, where the land meets sea, life performs a daily balancing act between extremes. And my next guest, marine biologist Ruth Searle, is joining me right now to talk about the Intertidal Zone, Life on the Edge. That's her latest book, and it really sounds like a gripping title, a celebration of one of our planet's most dynamic ecosystems. Welcome, Ruth. How are you doing?
Hello, thank you. How are you? Okay.
Yeah, really good. Really looking forward to picking your brains. We do. Our studios are based quite close to the shore, so I'm sure that Oh gosh, there's so many puns here. I'm sure that after speaking to you, it might open our eyes a little bit when we're walking along that little intertidal zone. Tell me about where exactly is that zone? What are we talking about?
Well, it's that strip of coastline basically between the land and the sea, and it gets inundated with water twice a day when the tide comes in. So animals are submerged underwater for part of the day, and then they're exposed to the sun and the wind and all that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's just that strip of land between land and sea.
And what drew you to studying that very tiny little area, and how much is there to be discovered in that small little space?
Well, there's quite a lot. I, as a marine biologist, I'm interested in all aspects of marine biology. And although I studied whales for my specialist subject, I love all aspects of marine biology. And it just seemed like a lovely thing to study, and to write a book about. So, of course, there's coastlines all around the world, and they've been evolving over time. Just the book takes a bit of an evolutionary aspect to it all, it's just a very dynamic, interesting environment, really. And the animals that live there are very hardy. They have to be, it's such an extreme environment, really.
Yeah, I do see that the book does focus on that evolutionary aspect. What role does that area play in the evolution of everything that we see on the planet, or just in that area?
What roles does it play? Well, because it's such a dynamic environment, always changing, animals that live there have to be very resilient. And although we've got very extreme environments all over the planet, all over the marine environment, we've got hydrothermal vents, we've got polar environments, hot springs, places like that. They're all extreme in their own right. But on the shore, it's just so dynamic, so changing all the time, changing with the seasons, changing every day, hour by hour, it's changing. So those animals have got to be very resilient, and they've evolved, in amazing adaptations, limpets clinging onto rocks, during the low tide, and, crabs scuttling about and, moving after their prey and things, and the way kelps, bend in the currents. They've just had to adapt, to a very changing and dynamic environment.
I'm fascinated to hear really a bit more in detail about some of those adaptations, because they're just things, I don't know, to a layperson walking along the beach, we won't give it a second thought. We won't be like, why does the crab scuttle, or why does the why does the algae move like this? So if you can just sort of whettle our interest a little bit with it, like explain in detail some of the most exciting or interesting adaptations that you've come across in your book.
Okay, well, I've got a real soft spot for limpets, and, you can just walk past them and you just think they're just stuck to the rock, and, they're nothing, but they're very interesting animals, really. They've got what they call a home scar, so they go back to the same little bit of the rock every time. And it's so closely aligned to the shape of the bottom of their shell. They keep themselves moist during the time when the tide is out. And then when the tide is in, they go off foraging, and they've got this big tongue called a radula, and it's with little spikes on, and they're stronger than steel, and they scrape all the algae off the rock. And then when the tide is going back out, they go back to their home scar. They leave a sort of mucus trail so that they can find their way back to their home scar. And starfish will come along and they'll try and predate on limpets. But the limpet knows it's coming, and they can lift up their shell, rock back and forth, and they stomp down onto the starfish's arm. So they, and they can be quite aggressive, really, limpets. And when there's predators around, they can move quite fast, a couple of millimeters a minute, which sounds nothing, but it's quite fast. Whereas a sessile animal that's just stuck on the rock. And in part of the world, I think it's California area, there's a certain type of limpet there, and I've forgotten the name of it, to be honest, but they get quite aggressive, and they actually knock each other off the rocks for, competing for space. So they're really interesting animals. I love limpets.
Oh, there's a lot going on there. And those, the animals that you find there, or, some of the life that you find there, how long have they stayed in their form in evolutionary terms? Are they fastly evolving things, or are they things that, evolved and have done so well in that environment, they've just stayed as they are for a long time?
Yes, a lot of them have. And, going back to limpets again, they're very simple animals because the evolution has stripped away anything excess that they don't need, so they just live in with exactly what they need. But over millions of years, you get these evolutionary arms races where like predators like crabs grow big strong claws to crush shellfish, and then the shellfish will grow thicker shells to counteract that. So you've got this arms race going on all the time, and it takes a long time, over millions of years, and that's what creates all the biodiversity on the shore, all the different variety of animals we see.
And you've got these beings that have been around for so many millions of years. Are we seeing any human impact on either the way they're living or their habitat, climate change or litter, or has there been any changes in their lives since we've come along?
Yes, I think there has. One of the big problems is coastal squeeze, as it's called. And we put up hard defences against the sea coming in. And yet, when the sea levels rise, the sea comes in, it just drowns and destroys those habitats. There's nowhere for them to go. So there's other things like, pollution, and plastic pollution particularly is a real, worry, because we can't get rid of it from the ocean. But there are lots of projects going on, other types of pollution as well. And, global warming is creating warmer seas. It causes all sorts of trouble. When I was doing research for this book, there was lots and lots of projects going on all around the world to try and help the coastal animals. And one of them, for example, there's the Medmerry Managed Realignment Project in East Sussex, and they deliberately let the sea breach those coastal defences, and it acts as a buffer. It creates a new intertidal zone, but it also creates a buffer for people, from the sea. So we're starting to work more with nature rather than trying to stop it bothering us and working against it. We're actually starting to work with nature, and there's a lot more marine protected areas now. I think 38% of the British coastline is protected area. So we're leaving nature alone to help it recover. And it's not so much the change for the intertidal zone, it's the speed of change. The global warming is happening so fast now that they haven't got those millions of years to adapt.
Yeah.
So that's one of the main problems. But I think if we leave nature alone with these marine protected areas, nature will sort itself out. We just need to stop interfering.
It'll do its own thing. Is that an important message of your book, or do you have any message, or is it just an interesting light read?
Yeah, it's an interesting light read. I don't get political or anything like that. I like to let nature tell its own story, and I love to just tell the story of nature and inspire a love of nature, whatever it is. I mean, at the moment, this happens to be the intertidal zone, but, one of my passions is nature and animals, and I think I just want to inspire a love of nature. So it'll tell its own story. If you love something, you want to protect it, don't you? So
of course,
that's where I come from with it. I don't get all political.
Well, that
hopefully
passion.
It's a nice. Yeah, I think it's just, it's my passion, and I hope that I can convey some of that in my writing, and inspire people to love nature as well. And then
I think your passion is definitely coming through. I wonder if we can end this interview on another one of the stories or descriptions of a strange little animal in the intertidal zone, because I love that about the limpets.
Yes, the limpets are lovely. Oh gosh, there's so many out there.
Yeah.
Mud skippers are very interesting as well. Of course, I don't think we get them around here, but in the mangroves, you get these mud skippers which live. They live in the sea and on land. They're sort of halfway, amphibians in a way. And they walk on their fins, and they breathe through their skin and through the mucus of their mouth. And they're amazing little animals, and their courting rituals are very interesting as well. They sort of jump up and down on their fins and to display to the females. And so, they're fascinating animals. And it's a bit of an echo of how life moved from the sea onto land. I think mud skippers are perfectly happy where they are, but it's sort of showing that evolution from the sea onto land.
Yeah.
There's so many. And those fiddler crabs are funny, aren't they? With one great big claw and the other small claw. And they wave their claws to the females and, as a display for them.
I love
there's
that.
So many. Yeah, there's so many amazing animals. I just love them all.
Well, it's been really, really lovely listening to you speak about them, and thank you so much for that. And if you'd like to discover more about these animals and about the intertidal zone in general, well, you do need to get your hands on the book. It is called The Intertidal Zone: Life on the Edge, and it's by Ruth Searle. You can find it on Amazon or on the Talk Radio Europe bookshop. Ruth, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Bye-bye.